and political director David Chalian joins me.
Good afternoon. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour. Couple little facts here. I'm packing a Colt King Cobra. That's a .357 caliber firearm with a black rubber grip and a 6-inch barrel, capable of piercing body armor at a distance of up to 27 feet, and it can put a hole in human bone and flesh the size of the Grand Canyon, which, by the way, is coming up on the left-hand side of the plane. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the flight.
No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Should I tell you? Should I tell you? Oh, you're Boy Scouts, but you know life. You know life. You know I'm totally off script right now.
Hello, this is News Dive, and I'm your host, Shane. It is Monday, July 31st, 2023, and let's dive into the headlines. While conservative Justice Samuel Alito's new Wall Street Journal interview covered various topics, one that provoked intense ire on Friday was his suggestion that federal lawmakers don't have the power to regulate the U.S. Supreme Court. Many legal experts and lawmakers took issue with Alito's remarks, with many citing the U.S. Constitution. As an estimated 200,000 Israelis took to the streets of cities across the nation Saturday in protests, the country's parliament advanced a bill to weaken the Supreme Court, legislation condemned by opponents as a judicial coup. A federal judge on Saturday temporarily blocked the implementation of an Arkansas law criminalizing librarians and booksellers who provide access to materials deemed harmful to minors. A Georgia judge on Monday rejected an effort by former President Donald Trump, who is seeking the 2024 Republican nomination, to upend Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis's probe of attempts to overturn the state's 2020 presidential election results. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Saturday rejected Australian concerns about WikiLeaks founder and Australian citizen Julian Assange, who faces up to 175 years in prison if extradited to the US and convicted for exposing US war crimes. Echoing calls from nearly 24 advocacy groups, 11 U.S. senators on Friday urged the Biden administration to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid from Egypt, absent improvements on human rights, in a nation where thousands of dissidents are imprisoned and almost all forms of political opposition have been crushed. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced Monday that his government will approve hundreds of new licenses for oil and gas drilling in the North Sea, drawing anger from climate advocates who say he's doing the bidding of the fossil fuel industry amid a nightmarish wave of extreme weather. Donald Trump said Friday that nothing will stop him from running for president, not even a conviction in his federal indictment case.
If going forward, right, you get these indictments, there ends up, you got a jury in D.C., you get convicted and sentenced. Does that stop your campaign for president if you're sentenced?
Not at all. There's nothing in the Constitution to say that it could, and not at all. And even the radical left crazies are saying, no, that wouldn't stop. And it wouldn't stop me either.
And that will conclude today's headlines. This summer has been the hottest ever recorded. Global fossil fuel consumption hit an all-time high last year, continuing to exacerbate the climate crisis. Against this backdrop, former President Barack Obama and his top White House strategist, David Axelrod, has been publicly lamenting climate inaction and warning of the imperative to fight climate change, pretending they are powerless bystanders who played no part in creating the escalating crisis. In fact, the opposite is true. When they were in a position to limit future damage from climate change, they chose not to prioritize climate policy and instead expanded fossil fuel production, all while Obama and Democrats were rewarded with a gusher of campaign cash from the oil and gas industry. That was me, people, Obama bragged in 2018 to a Texas audience about the unprecedented fossil fuel production boom that he engineered and promoted during a presidency that was guided early on by Axelrod, who reportedly urged the White House to steer clear of tough fights over climate policy.
I know we're an oil country, and we need American energy, and by the way, American energy production. It went up every year I was president, and that whole suddenly America's like the biggest oil producer and the biggest that was me, people. I just want you to.
Obama and Axelrod's more recent rhetoric is designed to memory hold their culpability in the climate crisis as it now scorches the planet. Their sentimental interviews, documentaries, and tweets discussing the need for climate action, all without contrition for their past climate denial, may help launder their images, but the behavior stands in the way of a component necessary to help the United States meet its climate commitments: accountability. In refusing to acknowledge their past climate denial, Obama and Axelrod are relying on liberals forgetting what actually happened in the recent past. Worse, they're telling every other Democratic leader that lip service can still stand in for action. Their bait and switch paved the way for what we saw this week: Democratic President Joe Biden giving a speech calling climate change an existential threat, all while he refuses to declare a climate emergency, accelerates drilling faster than former President Donald Trump, and backs a Supreme Court ruling advancing a massive fossil fuel pipeline. Obama and Axelrod, if they cared, could change this destructive dynamic by admitting the role their policies played in creating the crisis, and using their huge platforms and influence to press Biden and other Democratic politicians to take more aggressive action to meet the Paris Agreement that Obama himself negotiated with no enforcement mechanisms, and that consequently the US is far from fulfilling. On July 6th, the world experienced its hottest day ever recorded. That same day, Obama tweeted a video from an interview he had just given to comedian Hassan Minhaj, in which he spoke about the hopelessness faced by younger generations about the climate crisis.
Malia comes to me, she says, you know what? She's 24. All our friends, sometimes we talk about climate change and we just feel like there is no way we're gonna be able to solve this. We're looking at the science. It feels as if we're on a trajectory that we're gonna sail past this 2 degrees centigrade benchmark, where after that, potentially things are getting cataclysmic. And so I'll be honest with you, Dad, a lot of my friends, they just feel as if, what's the point? Because the world's burning and there's nothing I can do. And I said to her, well, she asked me, what should I say to them? Right. And what I said to her is, look, we may not be able to cap temperature rise to 2 degrees centigrade. But here's the thing, if we work really hard, we may be able to cap it at 2.5 instead of 3. Or 3 instead of 3.5. That extra centigrade, that might mean the difference between whether Bangladesh is underwater. Right. It might make the difference as to whether, 100 million people have to migrate, right, or only a few. Right.
And these incremental changes
that matters.
Yeah, I see. What
it makes a difference. Sure. And
it's
to be
worth
able,
fighting for. And
it's worth fighting for.
And you can't descend into nihilism and not try to save those 100, 200, 300 million people. It matters.
That's a lot of people.
I agree with it. Yeah, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
Left unsaid in the interview is that Obama squandered numerous opportunities to tackle rising temperatures, and even bragged about overseeing the largest expansion of fossil fuel production in US history. In March of 2012, Obama gave a speech in Cushing, Oklahoma, in which he touted what we're calling an all-of-the-above energy strategy. That month, More than 15,000 warm temperature records were broken in the United States, making it the hottest March ever, developments that were likely exacerbated by climate change. He told the crowd, "Under my administration, America is producing more oil today than at any time in the last 8 years. We've quadrupled the number of operating rigs to record high. We've added enough new oil and gas pipeline to encircle the earth and then some." Obama went on, "As long as I'm president, we're going to keep encouraging oil development and infrastructure, and we're going to do it in a way that protects the health and safety of the American people. We don't have to choose between one or the other. We can do both." That summer, Arctic sea ice hit a record low, and in the fall, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a report finding that Earth was on track to warm by 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. The report warned of the inundation of coastal cities, increasing risk for food production, potentially leading to higher malnutrition rates, many dry regions becoming drier, wet regions wetter, unprecedented heat waves in many regions, especially in the tropics, substantially exacerbated water scarcity in many regions, increased frequency of high-intensity tropical cyclones, and irreversible loss of biodiversity, including coral reef systems. Obama received $1.1 million in campaign donations from the oil and gas industry during his 2012 re-election campaign. In 2015, Obama declared that there was no greater threat than climate change. Later that year, he signed legislation lifting the 40-year ban on crude oil exports, a key priority for Republicans and the fossil fuel industry, increasing fossil fuel exports by more than 750% in the first 5 years after it was lifted. As president, Obama oversaw an 88% increase in total oil production.
And by the way, American energy production, it went up every year I was president. And, that whole suddenly America's like the biggest oil producer and the biggest gas. That was me, people. I just want you to.
"We were warned, and for decades, the world shrugged," tweeted David Axelrod, a senior advisor to President Barack Obama and the chief strategist for both of his presidential campaigns, on July 21st. Skeptics dismiss science. Now the effects of climate change are inescapably clear. 2 days later, Axelrod tweeted, "For decades, we dithered and ignored the warnings and the science. Now we're paying the price. Yet some still promise to roll back common sense measures necessary to try and prevent today's disaster from becoming tomorrow's irreversible catastrophe." Just a few weeks earlier, Axelrod had told the New York Times that including the natural gas Mountain Valley Pipeline in the recent debt ceiling deal to please coal baron Senator Joe Manchin was a necessary compromise. The pipeline project would carry fracked gas from West Virginia to Virginia, across steep terrain in the Appalachian Mountains, including more than 200 miles with high landslide susceptibility. Opponents say the new pipeline would cause emissions equivalent to 26 new coal-fired power plants. When Obama was president, news reports suggested that Axelrod helped steer the administration from climate action. In 2010, a New Yorker story on the failure of Obama's signature climate policy, a cap-and-trade plan that would have capped greenhouse gas emissions while allowing corporations to trade pollution credits, reported that Axelrod, though influential, was not particularly committed to the climate legislation. According to the story, after passing the Affordable Care Act healthcare law in 2010, Axelrod and other senior White House advisors warned that being closely associated with the messiness of congressional horse trading was destroying Obama's reputation, and did not want to pick another big fight over cap and trade. In 2012, The Atlantic published a report suggesting that Axelrod had shut down any talk of climate change during Obama's re-election campaign. Neither Obama nor Axelrod responded to a request for comment. And that will conclude today's episode. Please like and follow the show, give the show 5 stars and leave a good review, and share it around. Follow the show on social media. You can find links in the description below, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.